Hey everyone, hope you're having a stellar day. And if you're stateside, hope you're having an excellent Memorial Day holiday week. I know I am. I'm with my family right now, and it's been really nice seeing everybody after so long. I think it's been a year since I've seen everyone, so this has been particularly nice. As always, I'm Riley, and this is Sex with Everyone. And today I'm talking with Chaos Keeper in Phoenix, Arizona. And Chaos Keeper is on the other end of a flashpan marriage and discusses his experiences with having such an intense relationship so quickly and is now going through a divorce. He talks about his belief in chaos magic and his use of sex magic and his love of having drug-induced sex and what he finds so enjoyable and intimate about those experiences. He also discusses being polyamorous and how he and his primary partner do not have much of a sexual relationship together and why that is. It's a really interesting conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. So please join me as I talk about sex with Chaos Keeper. Chaos Keeper in the house.
Yes, indeed.
What is up, my friend?
Not a whole lot. Just getting my life put back together after my recent relationship collapse.
Oh no! Well, we got to start there then. Right. What happened?
Sometimes you meet somebody and fall in love way too fast and don't pay attention to the red flags, and it ends up and bites you in the ass.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. What red flags were you intentionally ignoring?
For one thing, how different our core belief systems were.
Like political, religious, or what?
I guess you could say religious. Her spirituality was at the opposite end of the spectrum of spirituality from where mine was. And her belief systems and the way that she portrayed herself within them was a little out of alignment with reality, is the best way I can put it.
Can you give me a for instance?
Believing that you're a channeler and that you are channeling gods and entities when the alternate, much more sane and rational resolution is DID. It's an interesting place to have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like. And just out of curiosity, what is your spirituality?
So I am a chaos magician, but I'm also a secular humanist. Cool. I don't believe in gods, demons, entities, anything like that as anything other than things created by the will of mankind. So central tenets in chaos magic and theory is that belief creates reality. If you have enough people who believe in something and invest energy into it, it will take on a life form and an entity of itself that feeds off the attention it's getting from those people. And that's how gods are created. Enough people believe in something, and an entity is formed that starts an exchange. It's fulfilling the things that the people want out of their entity. In return, it's getting worship and belief. The other side of that is a god ignored is a demon born.
Interesting.
So when the belief system fails out and there are no longer people investing belief into an entity, it will start to lash out to get attention. And that's how you get poltergeists and demons and other historical lore figures.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting place to be because I'm an atheist. I don't believe in gods, but I'll happily, call the four corners of rock towers and use Teletubbies for the four corners because there's millions of little kids who think Teletubbies have a lot of power.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, working with my ex and talking with her about how she does in her eclectic practice. And it's just like, all right, well, I have some books you need to read because what you're describing at the core is what chaos and magic in theory is. You're just using it in a framework that's over here. And the other central tenet is use whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Discard anything that doesn't.
Yeah.
And so something I've been practicing on and off since my early 20s. And I completed a long process of reprogramming my subconscious. That's the central tenet of chaos magic in terms of where that power comes from. Is your subconscious mind has infinite power, but it's your subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. If it's aware, if your conscious mind is aware of what your subconscious is being told to do or programmed to do, there's a method called the psychic censor, which will come in and actively block your subconscious from being able to receive those instructions. Mm-hmm. So you have to find a way to distract the conscious mind while you're programming the subconscious mind. And that may be via sigils, that may be via sex magic, that may be via drugs, it may be, there's a number of different ways to reach that state where you're able to program the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And I program my subconscious mind with a lot of psychedelics. A lot of psychedelics. It was effective. I look at my life now compared to where I was, and I'm pretty happy with the overall results.
How cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned sex magic. Is that something that you practice?
It is something I have done before.
I would love to hear everything about that. I know nothing about sex magic, and that is, on brand right now.
Well, one of the ways that you can call up power to utilize to empower a sigil or a ritual or create a new entity, such as a servitor or a god form, is with sexual energy and very akin to tantric meditation. And you will generally, with a consenting partner, work together on what you're going to accomplish and what you're going to do. And you will utilize sex as a way to bring yourself right to the point of orgasm over a long period of time without crossing the line, and build that like tension edging? Up. Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And bring that energy and bring that in and focus it. And then in the process, when you actually release, rather than focusing on how good, how amazing, how great this feels, you're trying to hold the image or the thought or the manifestation of that ritual that you're doing in your head, so that the energy that you're releasing is going there.
The energy you're releasing when you orgasm, I assume. And so sex magic can be used for things that are not necessarily sexual in nature, like when you're focusing on bettering yourself in some way or something. Okay. Interesting. I would love to hear like an example of something you've done, a ritual you've done with sex magic before. And is it something that you do solo or with somebody else?
It can be either. Okay. I mean, there's a trope in the 90s about chaos magicians masturbating in corners to charge sigils to go off and fight their little shamanic wars with each other, you know. It's just one of a multitude of different tools that you can use, and it's not one I've used a lot. Drugs are always way easier, and at the time when I was practicing, I was very single and not in a position. I was living in a house with 3 guys in the living room on a couch. So wasn't dating anybody, wasn't seeing anybody. And so it was all right. What are my options? All right. I have sigils to work with. I have drugs. I have working with entities that I call up in the midst of a robo trip. And I don't know if you're familiar with what that is. So dextromethorphan is the main ingredient in Robitussin DM.
Okay.
And it's a molecular mirror of morphine.
Okay.
But it's also a potent disassociative.
Huh.
So if you drink a bottle of Robitussin, you will trip.
Interesting.
Very hard.
Yeah.
And it is also one of the strangest trips I've ever experienced in my life. And it puts you in a state of lucid dreaming. So the first time I did it at home, and I was like, wow. And I started playing with lucid dream. I was like, I want to see chaos stars everywhere. And they just sprouted like flowers all around me, fractals and weirdness. And I was like, all right. And I'm just playing with the whole with the hallucination and seeing what I could manifest and what I could do. It was like, I want to see dead bodies grow up out of the ground everywhere. It was just like,
good.
Oh, okay. And went out to the club, came home, forgot how to pee. Because you're disassociated from your body.
Right.
Spent like 15 minutes in the bathroom, like, how do I pee? How does my body turn on? I was running a sink for like 15 minutes to try to use the water trick.
Yeah.
And eventually, finally was able to. But it was very, very surreal. And one time after, like, the kind of crescendo moment for me where I had gone through this process of very stark depression in Oregon during the winter every year. Mm-hmm. From November through April, my life fell apart. And started working with chaos magic and had this little crystal skull that I used a Sharpie to inscribe a bunch of sigils and work on, that I used to house my depression. And I did use sex magic and charged that sigil using masturbation and was able to get relief from my depression.
Wow.
For about 18 months. And it finally came to the end of this. I had been starting to do work with the Cthulhu mythos, which is a very dark and weird place to try to draw power from. It can be done. I don't recommend it. Because it starts to intrude into your life in really unexpected ways. The people in your life that you meet start to get markedly more weird and cultist-like. It's like, and I don't want to say it's like law of attraction, because the law of attraction is bullshit. But you can tune into a certain wavelength, and other people who are on that wavelength will see it in you. Mm-hmm. And I'd gone on this trip to Seattle with a bunch of friends, and on the way back, we were, this is in the 90s before everybody knew meth was bad. We had all been doing meth all weekend, and we'd gone up to this thing called the Goth Scouts. Back in the 90s, there was like an organization. It was like a joke. Goth Scouts organization. There were goth merit badges that you could earn and all of this stuff. It was the early days of the internet. Yeah. So we were up there for a Goth Scouts meeting. Like 5 of us had driven up. At every rest stop we stopped at another line, and then drove on and got there and ended up leaving and driving back to Portland. And it was foggy, and the entirety of I-5 has these big sodium lithium ion lights along the freeway. And in the fog, this cone of fog, like brightly lit fog, right, and then dark fog all along the freeway. And the whole way home, I have mythos entities appearing in the cones of light. By the end, it's Gnarltep in every light staring at me. And I'm just like, Jesus fuck, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, Jerry, what's going on? He's like, I don't know, but I keep hallucinating semis trying to T-bone us. And I got home and I was just like, time to drink a bottle of Robitussin, because I need to tap into whatever is going on. Gnarltep is, in the mythos, he's a all-seeing, all-knowing god of knowledge, but pure chaos that drive you mad. And got home, drank a bottle of Robitussin, and working on my computer, and we had this plaid couch that I slept on. And I knew it was time to stop when the plaid started rolling like a tank tread across the whole couch.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right. And then sat down and started with putting my protection up and doing all of that stuff. And then started feeling around to try and get in touch with what was going on and why I was seeing this representation of this entity for 3 hours straight in every light. And turned out that what was blocking me from accessing that was this crystal skull. And I ended up taking it out onto the deck with a 5-pound sledgehammer and shattering it.
Oh, wow.
And it exploded like shrapnel. Just like in a million different directions. And those feelings and things that I had locked up and bottled away from me came back. But they came back different. They no longer had quite the same grip and edge that they'd had previously. And the next couple months, I was able to get out of that house and into an apartment with the guy Sean, who was always over, became one of my really good friends. And just, it was like the start of me rebuilding my reality into the reality I needed it to be to get me to where I'm at now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Huh. It's really interesting. It's always amazing what power we can have when we focus our energy into something very specific. And, whether for you it's chaos magic and for other people it's various other religions or into themselves or in various things, but it's always interesting because our power of belief can be so strong. It can have like a really tangible mark difference on us. And I find that fascinating. I am curious, for putting sex magic specifically aside, how does your faith, do you consider it a faith? Or is it just like spirituality? How do you classify it, I guess?
It's a belief system.
Okay. So how does your belief system in chaos magic relate to your sexuality, or does it at all? Have you ever noticed like a difference of like it having some kind of say or filter on your sexuality or the way you interact with partners or anything like that? It
does. So back to central tenets of chaos magic, nothing's true or everything is permitted. And what that means is there are no laws in the world that govern you and what you decide to do, as long as you are willing to accept the consequences of your actions. And for me, I am a very big believer in consent. And for me, consent is important because I'm on the dominant side when it comes to BDSM and sex. I want to play with my partners, and I want to play in ways that they want to be played with. And I want to be very sure that I am not pushing boundaries that I have not been given permission to push. So when, for example, I've got my massage table set up and I'm working with my ex-partner, and she's a big squirter. And so it's like figuring out all of the fun new ways that I could get her to produce ever more. And we had discussed it beforehand, and she's like, blah, 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 and this and this and this, and understand, I may say stop, but push me just a little further.
Yeah.
And so we moved from 2 fingers to 3 fingers, different positions, figuring out where it was. And eventually it was just like, all right, well, let's see, with 4 fingers and a forward rake, I can make you squirt every 15 seconds.
Jesus.
And I'm like, well, let's work on this. And so I worked it up to putting a fist inside her. And it was like every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And she was like, go figure. I never would have thought that would be the thing. But that's getting there to that point where it was, you have to get comfortable with, and you can push the boundary. They get to listen if they're like, no, you gotta back off. You move in and out and work in conjunction with them to get to that point. It's the same thing if you're working with a paddle or a flog or anything else. You've got to figure out where their comfort levels are and how much they're into, and work in and out with a safe word, with whatever signaling. And you have to pay attention to it because that's your responsibility as the person who's being the top. There's some differing schools of thought on that, and some people refer to it as topping from the bottom. And that's kind of the relationship that's how in my mind it should be, because you're working together to provide your partner with an experience that they're going to enjoy and that you're going to enjoy. And if you're in tune, and as Dan Savage says, GGG, good giving and game. And that basically boils down to, we as humans expect our partners to be good at sex.
Yeah.
Which means practice.
Right.
We expect our partners to be giving, to give us pleasure and not always get it in return.
Mm-hmm.
We expect our partners to be game, to try anything that we might like. And we're willing to do the same for them.
Right.
And my ex-partner she's a very hurt individual. And I understand where she's coming from and the things that she's been through. And I understand why she made the decision that she did. It's kind of a hard balance to be in a relationship with someone where in the bedroom they're asking you to push the line, help them grow, help them learn. But when it comes to the interpersonal relationship, they expect absolutely rock hard, strict adherence to every quote boundary, with no room for errors, no room for human mistakes. But at the same time, they maintain that they don't expect perfection, that they know that everybody's human and makes mistakes.
Right.
So it becomes a very impossible line to toe. Yeah. And so,
yeah,
such is life. Moved on from that. And
that was a pretty quick relationship that y'all had, right?
Yeah, no, we met in March of this last year and hit it off really well, dated up until May when we decided, just loosely dated, not even any sexual activity until May, and just got to know each other. And really, I had fell in love and, had a lot of discussions and a lot of talks where we, came across issues, discussed them, talked about how to resolve them, worked through it, and got together on Mother's Day, which we were affectionately calling MILF's Day because she did not have her son that weekend. And I had told her the first day that we met that I was into her. And she's like, I don't like that. And I was like, okay. Well, are you okay with me getting to know you more? She's like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. By the end of the night, she gave me her phone number and we started talking, and I had made the offer. I have a hot tub, I have a pool, you're welcome to come over anytime, and never pushed it. Yeah. And the weekend of Mother's Day, she's like, I think I'm ready for that hot tub day. I was like, all right, sweet. I'll be by to pick you up this time and we'll go from there. And came over, we got in the hot tub, drinking tequila and talking, and just for 3 or 4 hours. And then she had her evening call with her son from the edge of the hot tub on her phone and continued talking. And the subject of my birth chart came up. And astrology is cute and entertaining, but fundamentally racist.
Racist?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it? I've not
is.
Realized that.
Any system which says that the following qualities about you can be defined by something you have no control over is fundamentally racist. It fundamentally calls back to the idea that you can tell something about somebody by the color of their skin.
Yeah, right.
That you can tell something about somebody by where they were born. Mm-hmm. And that is astrology in a nutshell. Yeah. Where you're born, yeah, sure what stars are in the sky above you, stuff that you have no control over.
Right.
And I've firmly maintained that astrology is good for 2 things. Making you money and getting you laid. It bears out.
Yeah.
Because the first time I gave her my actual birth date and time, she ran my chart and she was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. This makes so much sense now. You've never been loved the way you were supposed to be. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I can love you that way. Okay. And swam up into my lap and changed the nature of the relationship entirely because
of your birth chart?
Because of my birth chart.
Wow.
And she full on knows that is how I view astrology and how I view all of that. And we've talked about it repeatedly. And it just moved faster and faster and faster from there. Like, she effectively moved in by the end of the month, and I was totally okay with that. Like, It was like, I'm happy. And then we started having like weird bumps. She'd get upset and she'd start withholding touch, start withholding sex, wouldn't talk about it. I'd have to wait until she was ready to talk about it before we could even discuss the issue. Right. And we would discuss the issue 8 times out of 10. It was something that I needed to apologize for. 2 times out of 10, it was something that she had to go away and think about for 8 or 10 hours before she came back and acknowledged that she was in the wrong on that one and that she would try to modify her behavior. But every time there was any type of a conflict, it was that exact same pattern. I won't hug you. I won't touch you. I won't talk to you until this. And that could be overnight. It could be 3 or 4 days because she's, quote, processing. Right. And she would do a thing that I refer to as weaponizing her trauma. She would make me responsible for her reaction to something that I did.
Like what?
So one of our biggest pain points was fundamentally, I believe that sex is the lubrication of a relationship.
Yep.
It is how I personally know whether or not something is really wrong. Mm-hmm. Because if my partner and I are still fucking regularly, even if we're arguing or having tense discussions or trying to figure something out, like, fundamentally we're okay because that's the base human layer of communication between partners. Yeah. And
like maintaining that connection.
Yeah. And then that's how you get through those rough spots. That's how you get through. That's how you let your partner know that even though we're fighting, even though we're arguing, even though there's this tension behind us, I still love you. I still want to be with you. I still want to do all of these things that make us a couple and partners and get through this. And so we had several discussions over time where you'd be 3 or 4 days out. I've been in the same house, in the same room with a partner who doesn't want to be touched, doesn't want to talk to me. And it would boil over to the point where it became an actual conflict at that point. And I'm just like, this isn't acceptable to me to be in a partnership that's this way. Like, I'm trying to do everything I can to work with you and make this work. I'm literally paying all of the bills. I'm providing all of the resources. I'm doing all of these things so that you have the bandwidth to do this court paperwork, to fight for custody for your kid, which you would not be able to do if you were working, you'd not be able to do if you're doing this. And all I'm asking for in return is regular physical touch and affection. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not requiring you to service me at need. It doesn't have to be every day. Right. But it just needs to happen regularly. Yeah. And that became, you're just like all of my older partners. Just like, I always have this fight, blah, 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 blah. And then it was like, okay, I understand that an experience similar to this is something that you've had before, but I am not those people. Right. And it is unfair of you to treat me as if I am them and we're having this conflict again, because this is a discussion we are having about us and how we're going to deal with this. Right. And when we went on our honeymoon and we went up to Oregon and we joined all my friends for this festival that we do every year, and we had been talking and rehashing, and as you do when you're driving for 3 days. Yeah.
And stuck in a car together.
And she was trying to get her OnlyFans off the ground at that point and all of this other stuff. And I'm just like, I understand that these are all things you're trying to do, but we're also on our honeymoon. Like, with finances as they were then, I could afford to pay for everything. And I'm like, don't worry about doing that right now. Like, that can all start as soon as we get back. That can all be the focus and do all of that. But right now, this honeymoon is about us bonding together and forming the foundation of what our relationship is going to be for the rest of our lives together. And that was a very psychedelic-filled weekend on a lot of levels, but it also was 12 to 14 hours a day of intensive one-on-one discussion and talking and what we want in the future and how are we going to do this. And I did not have I had sex on my honeymoon twice. The first 4 days we had taken her son up to meet my family. Mm-hmm. And one day there, my brother and his girlfriend were like, hey, we're going to take your kid to the park so you guys can have some alone time.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And so we got to do that time. And then the next time was not for almost a week and a half later. We were on our way back to, after having multiple conversations all night, deep in the woods, and I finally found the words that made her understand. That was like, you weaponize your trauma. Mm-hmm. You use your weaponized trauma to control what I am allowed to speak about. Mm-hmm. And if there is something that is triggering you or traumatizing you, you take that triggering and trauma out on me in ways that make me not able to tell you what's going on, that don't allow me to do that. And that was something she had to sit with. And she was like, you're right, I do that. And continued having like your expectations regarding sex are unreasonable. And I'm like, yeah, but it's real weird to me that when we're having sex regularly, we're not having problems. And back and forth over and over, drove all the way from Seaside, Oregon. So like I'd gotten us a hotel so that we could be in a space so that we could have because she didn't want to have sex on the road. She didn't want to. I was like, all right, fine. I'll get us a hotel. We can shower. We can do all of the necessary clean stuff. We can relax. And then it became this huge fight at the hotel because now I was expecting it.
Right.
And
it seems like you guys were just not on the same page at all with like expectations around sex with each other.
Yeah.
You know,
and so
it's hard. It sounds like that's a really hard discovery to have on your honeymoon.
Very, very hard.
Not ideal, for sure.
So we did a cocaine-fueled drive from Seaside, Oregon to Parker, Arizona. So during this cocaine-fueled drive, where we actually were able to turn off the emotion as much and just have an actual discussion. Mm-hmm. We really made some headway and got some stuff figured out. And
sorry, does cocaine do that? It turns down emotional states?
For me, yeah, it does. And for her as well. It allowed us to, so we weren't drinking. We were just doing little bumps out of a bullet as we're driving and just talking and ranging subjects, just talking about the relationship and what we wanted and how we wanted to get there. Had called ahead to the hotel and they said, yes, we can get you checked in early. And we finally had sex again and destroyed 2 beds at the hotel. And she's like, this is really nice. We can destroy this better than sleep in this one. I'm like, yeah. And, went and got him, came home, had the weekend with him, got him home, and things were really pretty good for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And it just, as long as we were having sex, we were able to work and get it working. But as soon as that stopped, it became a point of contention. And it's not like she wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't right. So it was very much just, unfortunate. I mean, because we were extremely sexually compatible in every way.
When you were having sex.
Yeah, when we were having sex. But
right. And so you guys are obviously no longer together, and you guys are going through a divorce now?
We are. Yeah. So we filed.
Sounds like a flashpan.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it's It ended just as abruptly as it started.
Yeah, she decided that it was done and that there was no hope of bringing it back a week and a half after my dad died.
Jesus.
And it was extremely brutal and extremely traumatizing.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to be processing that one for a minute.
Yeah. But I think at this point I have mostly processed it. It's like you can't force someone to do anything. Once again, I'm a consent-based creature. Like if my partner does not want to be with me, my partner has no interest in working with me or trying to find a solution, then I just need to transition her out of my life as rapidly, as peacefully, and as cheaply as I can.
Right.
And I'm just very glad that I had the foresight to do prenups. And then when we filled out the paperwork and decided how we were going to file it, we did a post-nup covering all of the things that needed to be covered and reaffirming the conditions in the prenup, and then got it notarized and then filed that all with the court because we referenced the conditions of the prenup and the post-nup as part of the court filing. So that's all filed with the court. Yeah. It's all in their initial docs, and now we're just waiting for the actual hearing date to be set. So we're past the 20-day response period. And then I'm going to actually go to the court with a motion for default judgment because she's not filing a response. She's not doing anything. She's not walking away with any debt other than an IOU to me for $12,500 to cover her portion of the debt that she agreed that she'll pay because she got left with debt by her last husband and she doesn't ever want to do that to someone. And if I see it, awesome. Yeah. It'll be extra money. If not, I'm prepared to have to cover it myself. Yeah.
You're poly, so you have a primary partner.
I do.
How long have you guys been together?
Since 2007.
Yeah.
So 15 years now.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys don't have like a sexual aspect to your relationship. You've mentioned that to me before.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what it's like for you to have a partnership that doesn't have that aspect to the relationship when you were just talking about how much you believe in, sex being the lubricant of a good relationship.
It's been interesting. So like if I wanted a sexual relationship there, I could have one in a heartbeat. She would be down. My primary partner does not view sex in the way that most people do. It's for her, a blowjob is like a handshake. It's nothing. It's so literally anytime she's like, "You stressed? Do you want a blowjob? Do you want me to take care of that for you?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I for years it was just like, "Okay, cool, that works." But when I started to actually like want more of a relationship or any of that, then it was just like, "Nah, I'm good." Because and in the past I've had that function on her screw things up with somebody I was like getting involved with, because being solo for so long and being alone, it takes a little more work for me to come. And some partners get really upset and offended if you're not getting off with strictly penis and vagina.
Right.
And I had one girl I was seeing who was the first squirter I ever dated, and great sex, amazing sex all the time, but squirters tend to be very well lubricated. And it's hard to feel any friction a lot of the time. And so she would get really, really upset. And one time my primary partner had blown me before going on a date the next day because I was stressed and she was just doing the thing. I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. And the next day...
Very considerate.
Yeah. The next day, we go on this date and we have a great time, and the new girl, had gotten way too drunk at the club, and my primary partner taken her home and put her to bed in my bed, and I got home and laid down, and this girl initiated sex, and then when I couldn't achieve orgasm, she got really upset, really like personally insulted, and ended the relationship and left.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just because you couldn't get off that one time.
And so it was just like, all right, well, I need to remove that portion of that from the equation. And so
that
that's
must
why
have really hurt, though. Obviously, I'm not a guy, but from all the conversations I've had with men, sometimes people just don't get off. I mean, I certainly don't get off every time I fuck, but I know for the men that I've had that kind of conversation with, it can be a sore spot.
It can.
Very, like, it hurts the ego, because all the various reasons of toxic masculinity and shit. And so for somebody to straight up take you at this point where you're probably embarrassed or feeling, some kind of inadequacy in that particular vulnerable moment, and then just shove it in your face and end the relationship over it is so next level fucking rude. I mean, that is good riddance in my fucking opinion.
Oh yeah, no,
peace out, dude.
I don't regret any of that, and
it's horrible.
I spent several years just ignoring relationships and dating and gaming and just being like, I don't care.
Yeah. So I think I missed the part where you were talking about like intentionally not having a sexual relationship with your Natalie, primary partner now, like partner, just because you just don't want to like muddy the waters in some way? Or
pretty much.
Okay, like, interesting. Because you guys have built up like such a good relationship.
Yeah, I mean, we dated for 8 years before we got married.
Okay,
and then we were married for 2 years and figured out that being married was not where we needed to be.
Oh, why is that?
Because in my brain, I'm poly, but how I enter a relationship sets the tone and the theme for the relationship. If I go into a relationship and it's going to be monogamous, that relays in my brain a certain way that are sets neural pathways, which say, this is my monogamous partner.
Right.
And there's expectations in that equation. And I have matured a lot and grown a lot since 2007 when my primary partner and I started dating, and it was hot and heavy monogamous, and that's what they were into. And it evolved over time to be not that. And the more further it evolved away from that, the worse it got for me.
So you guys started exploring poly when you were married?
When we were dating, actually, before we got married.
Oh, okay.
And we got married.
So you went into the marriage itself
in a
already kind of poly?
Already kind of poly. Not in any way that I'm proud of, like that you could fuck other girls.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a source of contention, and the goalposts kept moving for her as to where she needed to be happy. And then we separated, not because we were getting separated, but because like her father died, we got married. And then she was coming to Phoenix to open a business with her brother, and she left a year before I was able to go, a year and a half. And so we were doing the long distance thing, and the rules became, well, I don't care what you do in Phoenix. Fuck whoever, do whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just don't fuck anybody in Vegas, because I don't want to have to meet, see, deal with any of that.
Yeah.
And that was the agreement. And then I was coming down to visit her. She was coming up to visit me. I was in town getting some security training, which is actually what got me my permanent position here in Phoenix. And her current boyfriend was living with her at her apartment, and there had been some contention and problems, and I knew he was living with her, but I didn't know that he was living with her. Like she had a live-in boyfriend. And so there was contention about that. And then I came down for like the final round of training. I ended up driving this guy back to his parents' house so that I could have a night with my wife where he wasn't there. And we're talking, and she disappeared downstairs to go, I think, get some weed from the neighbors or something. And she had left her phone there, and we had each other's passwords. And I was just like, and I'm looking back, and I'm like, I see a text message comes in from her BDSM pet in Vegas. Mm-hmm. My cock misses your booty. And I scroll back through, and I'm like, wow, she was stopping on the way out of town every time she came to town to fuck him before she left, which is a direct violation of the agreement that we had.
Right.
And she came back, and I said, an interesting text message came in. I had my phone on the desk recording, and I recorded the entire conversation. I was just like, here are all of the reasons why I have a problem with this. Here is why this is a betrayal, and here is why we are getting a divorce. Because I'm willing to try and make this work, but if you're lying to me, if you're not being honest with me about what you're doing, then there's no basis for any of this. Right. Because this is all built on trust. This is all built on this. And so I drove back to Vegas and started that whole process. And
so how did you guys get back together after going through something so difficult together?
Because we're still best friends. I mean, it was like the entire when leaving, it was like, I'm getting a divorce, like, because I want to preserve the friendship. Like, I can be your friend, and deal with you fucking whoever.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me. But when I'm your husband and you're lying to me about who you're fucking, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
And so she went back to Phoenix. I think it was probably 6 months later when I moved down. And when I moved to town, she came up and helped me. She drove my car down with the cats in it, and I drove the U-Haul down with Maya in it, because Maya was the new cat who had just moved in, and got everything to my apartment in Paradise Valley, got everything set up, did all of that. And then she went on about her life. She's like, when you're moving down here, I'm not going to be living with you. And I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And so we lived apart down here for a year and a half, and, still talking, still hanging out, still being friends. And she would come over occasionally, and, still occasionally having sex, still doing any of that. And we eventually were talking about the house. Like, the long-term plan is to buy a house and do all this stuff. And is that something that you're still interested in doing? She's like, yeah, I do want to do that. And so she was living in an apartment downtown Phoenix, Midtown. Mm-hmm. And I was way out in Paradise Valley. Put 16,000 miles on my car in 1 year driving between Paradise Valley and downtown for shows and events. And I want to be closer in and all that. So she had a run of different roommates that were really incompatible and not working for her for a number of different reasons. From the guy that she caught crystallizing ketamine on her kitchen counter and synthesizing DMT in the kitchen, to a couple of really slovenly, unclean people.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, my lease is up. They want to raise my rent. And if we're going to try to buy a house together, then we should be trying to save money. I'm like, you have a 2-bedroom apartment. I can move into the other room. I can keep the litter box in my room. I can have the cats in there. You'll have your dog Sasha on the other side. And she had, somebody sleeping on the couch at that point to help pay the rent and make everything cheaper, and eventually transitioned him out. And then she started dating, or I should say redating, the guy who was her high school boyfriend, who her parents did all of the wrong things and created the star-crossed lover scenario. You can't date him. You can't date her. Now we have to date because our parents don't like it. And And she's like right as we were getting started to move in, we were driving around, and she's like, so I got contacted by my high school boyfriend. He wants to get together and have coffee. And I'm just like, what? Why? I'm like, exes are exes for a reason. She's like, well, I want to talk to him and see how he's doing, because I felt like it could be so much of this and so much of that. And I was like, bad idea. Don't recommend it, but it's your life. So we moved back in together. We're seeing each other, but not an exclusive couple or anything like that. Yeah. And she was also seeing this guy, and then she was at the house less and less and less. And it became like I never see you. Why are you paying rent here if you're living somewhere else? Yeah. Like, are we still doing this thing? And then his lease came up, and she asked if he could move in with her in the second bedroom. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, save us more money.
Right, yeah.
And we saved up and got our down payment together, bought a house in 2018 in downtown Phoenix, and lived in that house for 3 years. And definitely interesting times.
Yeah.
My views on poly and relationships and stuff continued to refine, and I continued to think about what I wanted out of life and what was accessible. And people would always ask, what's going on with you guys together? I'm like, yeah, not really. I mean, we're best friends and we live together.
Yeah.
We have a very long-term committed relationship in terms of the friendship and cohabitation. And my most recent ex was like the first person who was like, yeah, it's a long-term poly relationship. It's largely non-sexual. Yeah. It does happen occasionally still, but it's not the primary driving force of why we're together and why we're doing what we're doing. And she was completely okay with that. And we went into this relationship with the understanding that we were open and poly. And so that was never a thing. And maybe I could have played the, like, my need for sex thing into just being with my other partner. But it's that fundamental, like, disconnect between what I felt like I needed from my current partner versus what I was getting was probably the biggest point of contention.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your experience with BDSM and, like, what you get out of it. You mentioned that you're primarily dominant.
Primarily dominant. So I got my start in the 90s, mid-90s, going to fetish nights in Portland, Oregon. And at that point, I was firmly convinced I was straight and not into guys at all, and never had any experience on that range. But I was, going to fetish nights with a group of friends, male and female. And the first time I went, my friend was like, "You coming to fetish night with me? I'll pick you up at this time." And I was like, "Okay, what do I wear?" He's like, "Club wear, dress for the club, dress whatever, and go." And he showed up to pick me up, and he's in a mini skirt and a little blouse with a bondage collar on and a D ring, and he hands me a leash.
Nice.
And he's like, "We're going to fetish night." And then, so we went to fetish night, and I'm sitting in a room full of people. And so Oregon has some really interesting laws that make it a really flexible place to do fetish night. You can't have people fucking live in front of people, but you can have projections on screens of people fucking live in a back room. Mm-hmm. So, like, we're in this play space, which happened at a bar called Barbody's Pan. And, we're walking up. It's like November, December. It's icy cold, like sleety rain. There's girls running up who are in head to toe liquid latex, scurrying into the club, and there's bouncers out front, and everybody's getting in. They're like, "Nope, you don't meet dress code. You got to go." All that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm in a room full of people. There's people in latex and vinyl, and that's probably where my earliest, like, rubber, latex, those are my aesthetics. So good.
Yeah.
And I had my first experience being in a place where people were actively playing and doing all of that stuff, and I didn't really participate that night at all. But I had previously, a friend of mine was dating this girl, and we were all, hanging out, drinking, and he had a wire finishing whip.
Oh, cool.
Which was a wooden dowel with literal electrical wire. And he was showing it to me, and I had it was calfskin, 23-tailed flogger that I had bought at Spartacus Leathers. This is probably what inspired me to get it, because he was showing. I was like, "Well, what does that feel like to get hit with that?" And so he's like, "Well, I'll show you." He's like, "Take your shirt off," and so he starts working, and then his girlfriend came over and started running her claws along my bald head. And I'm just like, whoa.
Like her nails? Or were they like metal claws?
No, like her fingernails.
Okay,
and
yeah, cool.
Doing all that.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, this is kind of amazing. And went to the first fetish night, and then, wax play and all that stuff. And so I went home and started experimenting with wax on myself, seeing what I liked, what I didn't.
Cool.
And so wax play's fun to receive, and ended up buying this flogger. And then I was driving around in the middle of the rainy season, winter in Portland, and I didn't realize that the flogger, which was attached to my hip, was like at the bottom of the door, sticking out of the car.
Oh,
like
no.
Half of it.
No.
It was actually the best thing that ever happened, because it took the calfskin.
Yeah.
And utterly broke it in.
Oh, man.
In such it became too soft.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what do I do with this? Yeah. And so I braided it. And I went, all right, I've got 23 tails. I'm going to do 5 tails of 3 and 1 tail of 5. 6 tails of 3. So the 18.
Yeah.
And so it was 1/4 inch, super soft, super supple calf skin. But then at the ends of it, it was like almost starting to fray and getting way super soft. Mm-hmm. So then it became braided till this far. Then it became a knot. Mm-hmm. And then you had these super, super fine, feathery, light touch. And you could dance that along.
Yeah.
And it was the softest caress you can possibly imagine. And with a flick of a wrist, it became the most solid thwack.
Cool.
And I was at a house party with, it was one of the first times I hung out with the same guys that I do this Noise in the Woods event with. And there was this guy, Sonny, there who was from New York. And I've tried to track him down. Never able to find him. All I knew was his first name. And he's there and he sees the flogger. He's like, hey, you know how to use that? And I'm like, and I've been practicing my figure eights on a plywood with tape and doing all of that. So I had some small amount of knowledge. Yeah. And so I start working and I'm warming it up and he's like, hit me harder. And I'm bringing it in. Hit me harder. And he goes, hit me harder, gerbil dick. And so I took a step back, grabbed it by both hands, and stroked it down his back so hard he dropped to his knees. And he spent he spent the rest of the night asking me to please be at least bisexual. And I was just like, yeah.
That's funny.
Thanks, but no thanks. And, you know, that experience, then a couple other experiences where I came to realize that at least on some level, I am attracted to men. But at the same time, it's something that I've never followed through with. Yeah. There's abuse issues in my childhood that kind of poisoned that well for me. And I don't know if it's ever something I'll fully get therapy for or process, or if I have any real interest in doing it. But at least being able to acknowledge that, I am attracted to men, but not all men.
Yeah.
And
do you play with men very often though, like in BDSM, even if you're not getting sexual with them? Because BDSM is kind of is able to like satisfy that itch a little bit.
Yeah, I have friends who would be totally down to do that. I never have. But I wasn't really after when I left Oregon and moved to Nevada. BDSM is a very different thing in Nevada than it is in Oregon, because
tell me about that.
Because in Nevada, prostitution is defined as any sexual act in exchange for payment. Yes. And it's also constitutionally guaranteed.
Yeah.
In any county with a population of less than 100,000 people, it's legal. Mm-hmm. And then once the population crosses that threshold, it becomes illegal. Mm-hmm. And that all dates back to the 1800s and early 1900s, when there weren't a lot of women out west there in the desert in those places. And so to give those miners and cowboys and everything else an outlet and keep the few women that were out there safe. I mean, they provide an emergency relief valve.
Yeah. So how does that change? How did you experience that changing the BDSM community?
You can't pay performers.
Yeah.
In Nevada. You can't pay in Clark County because prostitution is illegal.
Oh,
so you can't have professional BDSM performers. You can't have large events, which makes it like what fetish events there are. There's lots of underground clubs and places and things that you can get involved with, but that was never my scene.
Yeah.
So I just kind of put a hold on that and didn't really get involved with that. And then when I moved to Phoenix, there's a fairly big, there was a really big fetish scene active at that point.
Yeah.
Through a group that used to be called Horns and Halos. Mm-hmm. And they ran giant fetish events, brought in acts from all over the world and all kinds of stuff. And so my primary partner was a big fan of going to those, and we would go to those, and I'd get to work on her with the flog and dress her up in in rubber and put lube all over and do all of that fun stuff that I enjoy doing.
You mentioned kind of reworking that flog that you had. Was that where your joy of like creating kink implements stemmed from? Because I know you make paddles and stuff.
Yeah, so the paddle thing's actually kind of new.
Oh, cool.
I had somebody commission a paddle. They were like, I want this paddle, and they showed me a picture of this hand-shaped paddle that had Legos as a backing, so you could actually plug bricks in and make custom patterns and be as masochistic, sadistic as you might want to be. And so
Legos are
I was like, yeah, I'll do the design. This is the basic like outline of what it's going to cost me to custom design this. You know, I'll charge you this much for runtime, this much for design time, this much for this. And came up with some custom design, showed to him. And he's like, that's way too big. And so what was way too big was a cricket bat that is an 1.25 inches thick, weighs 4.5 pounds, and is made of red oak. It's custom CNC'd, and the front surface is almost entirely covered with randomized grooves and patterns.
Yeah.
As well as a custom cut out design based on Chaos Stars, because it's my Chaos paddle. And it leaves quite the epic mark. I've gotten to use it a couple times, and definitely gonna have to perfect that a little more, because I don't want to make people bleed every time I hit them.
Yeah.
But it is fun to play with. So I made this guy this custom paddle. He was super happy with it. So now I do that as a sideline. I'm working on a design for another friend of mine as a thank you for a lot of legal advice that he provided me, and I'm building him a paddle that, if I were to sell it to somebody, would cost about $400.
Yeah.
Just because the runtime and everything.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to be able to have that kind of skill to make, I mean, at the very least, gifts. It's a bonus to be able to make money from it, but it's always nice making custom gifts because they're even more meaningful, for sure. Especially for Kinkster friends. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, so if nothing else, it'll be a great conversation piece for him to carry around. He's a big guy, and he's a daddy dom. And when he saw it, he was just like, oh, when he saw it, he's like, oh, so good. And I was like, well, if you had one, what would you want on it? He's like, a Maltese cross, the Templar cross. And I was like, what do you think of this? And I was like, all right, what do you think of this? The Templar cross. Yeah. Inside a Celtic cross and knotwork. And he's like, whoa. I sent him pictures of the CNC artwork, and this is what it's going to look like. And he's like, oh my God, that's going to be amazing. And I'm like, it will be very good.
Yeah. I'm really curious. You've told me before that you have diabetes 1, and you've had it since you were a child. Yep. And I am curious if that in any way has affected your sex life or your sexuality or the way that you interact with partners in any way,
So to a certain extent, yes, because especially prior to getting an insulin pump, being and continuous glucose monitoring, unexpected lows, or blood sugar being too high to have sex, or, effectively I've been told that I should avoid any physical exertion if my blood sugar is above 275, which includes sex, which includes anything else.
Right.
And if my blood sugar drops too low, everything just stops working. Like it's just like, oh, and then it's like, well, I'm at 50. It's time to go eat some glucose, that kind of stuff. Then there are ED concerns, as you age. And I've had diabetes now for 40 years, and thankfully, none of the ED stuff has reared its ugly head.
ED, erectile dysfunction? Yeah, okay.
But I'm also in very good control compared to where I was when I first moved to Vegas, which was before I was on an insulin pump.
How old were you when you got your insulin pump and started being able to track everything better?
32?
Yeah. And that really changed a lot.
Oh, yeah. It still took years to get dialed in properly, and it really didn't get dialed in properly until I started exploring other dietary options than standard.
Really?
Yeah, because with an insulin pump, you have a basal rate, which is the rate of insulin that your body needs per hour to keep your blood sugar at roughly the zone it's supposed to be in. And they kind of guess that. when they put you on it. They're like, it's what we think you need.
Yeah.
But there's no real testing that right. they can do other than, well, where are your low blood sugars happening? Where are your high blood sugars happening? And when are you eating? And if you're not tracking that real well, it gets even harder to track. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until I started doing keto and doing an extremely low carb diet where I was almost not eating any carbs at all, that I really was able to focus in and see on a daily basis where I was getting too much insulin, where I was not getting enough, and could dial that into the point where now I can fast for 24 hours and I might have one blood sugar at 5 p.m. Yeah. And the only reason I still have that is because I haven't been able to find the way to adjust that time frame in a way that fixes it without sending everything out of control.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of lived with it. And my hemoglobin A1C is like a 6.3, 6.4, which is higher than it should be for a non-diabetic person, but it's been steady 6.3, 6.4 for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
Which means I'm doing very well. My average blood sugar is 130 to 150. Everything has been a lot better control since I started this, which is really amazing.
That's awesome. I can only imagine that because your body became a little bit more regulated, I can only imagine that your relationships kind of followed that trend. Did you notice like a marked difference in like...
So that was 32...
Or even being able to have sex more regularly, or
I was having marathon chemsex, like with partners.
Yeah.
Like my favorite sex in the world is sex on acid or sex on esoteric research chemicals that haven't been around for ages.
Yeah. Why is that? Why is acid sex your favorite kind of sex to have?
The connection that I feel with my partner, the utter awareness and union that I get when I'm having that kind of sex is it. I think it primarily is one of the reasons why I don't do one night stands. Like I did those in my 20s.
Yeah.
And sex without attachment, sex without a relationship behind it doesn't have a lot of draw for me. Like I need to be emotionally involved with the person that I'm with, or it's not fulfilling in any way for me.
Yeah.
And I would rather jerk off.
Yeah. So acid just amplifies that connection. Yeah. Cool.
And then the esoteric research chemicals are fun because it's 12 and a half hours of straight sex with 15 minor orgasms and 7 major orgasms. And a minor orgasm is a lot like jerking off. You get release, but the major orgasms are much more in line with how women describe their big O's, where it's just entire body arching, twitching, unable to do anything for as long as that lasts. But the best thing about that was the next day, neither one of us were sore. Neither one of us were raw. We didn't have to use any lube.
Wow.
Wow. yeah. Like, it's also the only time I've ever in my life been sated.
Yeah.
Where sex was literally the last thing on my mind.
Yeah. You mentioned that you have an OnlyFans. What has your experience been with that? And what kind of thing, like, content do you provide?
Right now, so I had a whole lot of content and I have a whole lot of content that I have model releases for, which I could legally be posting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Arizona has very strict revenge porn laws. And so all of this content was filmed with my ex.
Yeah.
And
so it's like a couple's OnlyFans?
No, she has her own performer profile. I have my own performer profile.
Okay.
She takes the stuff that she likes out of the sets that we shot and wants to present and does that. And then there's stuff that I took that I like that I want to present. And, I don't have a subscription. It's a free OnlyFans. It's just stuff from that. And so.
Do you have any solo stuff or?
No.
Yeah.
Never really my thing. I fall safely into the American male norm.
Yeah.
Of 5.5 to 6.5 inches. It's a penis. There are many like it. Yeah. It's right in the ballpark.
So what do you get? I mean, especially since it's like a free OnlyFans, what did you enjoy having an account like that for? Just putting yourself out there?
Putting myself out there. I enjoy making the content. I enjoy watching my partner get into a completely orgasm-based subspace where they are there to be the reception of every type of pleasure I can give them, even if it's not involving my penis, where it's like...
So is it...
Fisting,
I assume there's like kink and stuff on
there's a little bit of kink.
Yeah.
We shot some stuff that was more BDSM focused, and she floated some up to see if people were interested in seeing it, and they didn't. But we did do some kink stuff. We did do some stuff. They're really nice. I bought her a custom made latex nun's outfit, and that was one of my favorite shoots. That thing. So good. And my lawyer friend who gave me the advice is just like, yeah, if you want to keep that for your private spank bank, you can do that, but it's not even worth the risk of posting any of that stuff. And I'm not in a lot of the posted content on her for thing. I'm the photographer, or I'm doing that kind of stuff. But we made sure that if we posted anything, that I was properly outfitted and kitted as a performer and verified and all of that stuff.
Right.
And so now I've got to figure out what I want to do with it, what kind of content I want to post, what I want to do, and also I'll probably start doing stuff regarding the paddles and that kind of stuff.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I know my friend Mark would he would help me set up the stuff to record me working him over with the paddle on a St. Anthony's cross or whatever, and be totally down with that. And that's fine. I love Mark dearly. He's one of the few people who I would probably do something with. Mm-hmm. But also there's so much other baggage associated with that I'm not sure I'm ready to unpack. And what I have found is I'm attracted to vaginas more than anything else. It doesn't matter how masculine a woman is. It doesn't matter if they're a trans woman. I've dated people ranging the spectrum from extremely girly to extremely butch. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that does it for me. I don't find myself watching gay or bisexual porn. Mm-hmm. I'm not opposed to the idea, but it's just not really where I come from.
So when we went to that kink event together, you were decked out in, was that latex?
Head to toe vinyl PVC.
Vinyl.
Yeah.
And looking fucking hot as shit. And you had your, like a cop style hat.
Yes. My
and it says Keeper on it. Tell me about what Keeper means to you.
So Keeper is my BDSM title. Like master or whatever. And to me, the keeper is someone who tends to and cares for the filthy little animals in their life.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So my ex used to refer to herself as a chaos bunny. Yeah. So I'm the chaos bunny keeper.
I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hell yeah. What a fascinating conversation with Chaos Keeper. He has a lot of experiences I've just never talked to folks about before. So I loved hearing how he's utilized sex magic to literally get rid of his depression, but how he felt it also held him back in other ways after a while, and so needed to undo the work he had done on that. Absolutely fascinating. I did not realize that sex magic could be used in such a way. Also, throughout the conversation, it was clear how much he enjoyed having sex on drugs and what he got out of different kinds of drugs and how they enhanced sex and intimacy for him in terms of like connectivity and introspection. It just kind of goes to show that some people use drugs more as a tool than the often thought of, partying or escapism sort of aspects. So thank you very much, Chaos Keeper, for sharing with us a little bit of your story. Next episode, I'll be talking with Ethan in Mesa, Arizona, and he's a homeless man that I befriended, and he talks about his various experiences and how he thought for a period of time that he was trans and realized after a while that he's not. So definitely stay tuned for that story in 2 weeks. As always, I do have a Patreon if you feel so inclined to support me and this passion project of mine talking about sex and sexuality with other people. You can check it out at patreon.com/sexwitheveryone and get all sorts of good behind the scenes bonus content and extra events that I throw and whatnot. But alas, all good things must come to an end. So I will talk to you again in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, stay awesome, friends.